going on, everyone? Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture. This is our top 10 hottest selling comics of the week, our weekly video series brought to you by PopCultureZone.com. Before we get into this week's top 10 books, don't forget to check out PopCultureZone.com's. Their links are below. Check them out if you're interested in getting your hands on some awesome exclusive and incentive variants at affordable costs, CGC slabs, and of course all different kinds of pop culture items, including toys and statues. And if you're buying raw books, they ship at a flat rate fee of only $4.99. Pop Culture Zone is also on eBay, where they still hold a 100% customer feedback rating with over 8,000 ratings this year alone. Those links are below. Check them out and make sure you follow them on eBay as well.
I looked at this list and I'm going to be quite honest with you all. It was really tough for me to pick out 3 books. As you all know, we are a week out from these books hitting a top 10 list. I do the current week's data myself. I gather it, I collect it, and I show you guys what the book has done in the week after it hitting the top 10, and I compare. And I just could, and then we do the props or flops, right? But as I've been saying over the last few weeks, and I am always an optimist, and I try to be, right? And I'm always one to say there's no right or wrong way to collect comic books. You know, I really try to let people know when they take an approach of flippers are ruining the hobby, speculation's ruining the hobby, variants are ruining the hobby. And I said, no. Do you let other people do that? Anything that brings money into this hobby, for the more often than not, or more so than not, it is a positive thing. You know, variants bring money to publishers. You know, it brings work to artists. If there's 20 or 30 variants on a one issue, even though it may seem like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Speculating and flipping has been a part of the hobby for over 50 years now, even though it's changed and evolved over the years, even though it's heightened with the instantaneous information, with social media and the internet and all this stuff. But I've been looking at these lists more often, and then we've been looking at, well, props or flops, and I've been having conversations with you, Jeff, and with our guests and with our viewers about, well, what are we basing a props on? What are we basing a flops on? And I have to really break it down to everyone to explain, look, this is not a shopping list. Once these books hit this list, it's not a shopping list. So I felt like every book that I was giving props to, people were seeing that and saying, oh, I'm going to go buy this book now. Yeah. So I have to be really careful and really try to gauge, like, what am I giving this book props for? And I just looked at this list, and I've been saying this for the past few weeks as well. These lists, especially this year, we've been doing this segment. We've been looking at the cover prices data for 2 years now. Yeah. And it's gotten more and more week to week that the same 3 things are making this list. And that's optioned, movie spec, whether based on rumor or, you know, the official word, and incentive variants. And that's it. And let's pull up the top 10 and let's look at this. I mean, every single book on this list is incentive, option, or movie spec. 4 of them are one book. 4 of them are the 8 Billion Genies with cover A, and then 3 other incentive variants, right? And then you have a Marvel movie spec for the most part, and then 8 Billion Genies was option, and James, that's why it made the list here. Yeah, like a month and a half or 2 months almost, after its initial release. So while I'm not, and I'm going to talk about some books still, I am, guys, but if I have to give this list props or flops, Jeff, James, I'm giving the whole list a big fat flops. Flops. I'm giving the whole list flops because again, I can't keep repeating myself and breaking this down in the same way, because it's the same thing over and over. And to be quite honest with you guys, I'm just kind of burnt out on it. And we're going to talk about a few books here still. And of course, I want James and Jeff, both of you, to give your insight. So the ones that I wanted to pick out here are, let's talk about 8 Billion Genies first. And like I said, you had four covers, 4 variants for issue number 1.
And cover A still looks the best.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I agree. And to James's question, are we missing something here? This book came out in May. Why is it hitting the list now? Well, because just this last week, we got an announcement that it's optioned for Amazon for a feature film. This is an 8-part miniseries from Image that they want to create this expanded universe on. And what did I talk about last week when we talked about some of those, the Scout comic, and there was another one that got optioned? This might not even happen, because it happens all the time with these indies that get optioned. This may not happen. They get these big ideas. They pull directors and writers in and studios in, and then more than half the time, it never comes to fruition. So, and it boggles my mind. How are they going to do an expanded universe on an 8-book standalone limited series? And it's like, so you get Amazon and these studios behind these properties to say, oh, well, what's selling right now? Well, comic book movies are, and look what Marvel's doing with their expanded universe. So let's do that too. And are they even really thinking these things out? So while I'm not sitting here saying I'm mad at anybody for speculating on these books, maybe there's people that were able to get get their hands on these books and flip them and make money. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Inherently, there's nothing wrong with that. But I can't give this book a props, really, when there's so much uncertainty and volatility when you look at value and monetary value on the market for this book. And you can argue that the incentive market is what it is, and people will pay a premium for those because they like the cover art or they like to collect variants. But again, just to reiterate, all these books made this list this week simply because it was option, and that's where it just really concerns me. And that's just kind of my approach to these indie optioned books at this point that hit these peaks when the announcement hits, and then if you follow the trend, especially over the last year, those values have a really hard time holding.
It's like so many of those don't actually pan out too.
What Swaggle says right here, who's definitely in the industry. I mean, he's had 4 screenplays optioned in purgatory for exactly what you're saying, James. Sorry, I just wanted to highlight this comment there. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, no, it's just, and the funny thing is, that story is great. Like, you guys read that one? I thought it was actually like pretty fantastic. I'm pretty behind on my reading, but Image is actually the ones I like try to read. Like, I'm missing Marvel, I'm missing DC, I'm really behind, but those ones I try to read because they're just dope. So that's why I got it. And the funny thing is, the reason why I have 3 copies of that isn't because of some spec reason. Is because my ass can't remember what I pre-order. Comic book stuff. And
I do that too.
I got another one, and apparently I pre-ordered 2 of them, so then I had 3. It's definitely not a flop in terms of like storytelling. Like, get the whole series; it's going to be a blast. I can't wait for the graphic novel to come out. But in terms of like plugging your money into it, hey man, I don't know about that. Yeah.
I agree too, James, and I'm glad that you brought that up. Like, when you look at the story, and that goes back to your question, like, I really, it would, and again, not that you need to read comics to be a true collector, that, speculation is bad, but it would have been amazing to see this issue hit this top 10 when it came out.
Yeah.
Like,
it wasn't on my radar when it came out. I read a little blurb about it. It sounds fascinating. For those that don't know, 8 Billion Genies are available to the whole world to give one wish. And correct me if I'm wrong, James.
You're right.
To everybody.
And so there's definitely been a trend where lately I am just enjoying the hell out of Image. I don't know what's up. Like 2021 and 2022, Image is blowing Marvel and DC out of the water. Pretty much like 90% of what I pick up from Image, I'm really enjoying. Like, really enjoying. So it was a no-brainer for me to pick it up. I didn't see any Spec or whatever. It's just Image books right now are the tits, man.
One of my favorite books is Firepower. That's Image as well. You know, you have Scumbag is great. Like, there's a lot of good stuff coming from Image, no doubt. And everything's been convoluted with the big two as well, and that's been a bit frustrating. So I hear what you're saying. It's always good. Anyways, just we're kind of getting off track here, but taking a chance on new Image titles is not a bad thing at all.
Yeah, you don't get that for money. Anyone who's done this since the 90s knows, don't plug your money into Image.
Yeah.
If you want to read it, do it, but geez, it's not going to work out for you that way.
It probably won't be the next Walking Dead. Anyway, so Chris, I don't know if we're looking for props or flops with this one. How are we going to do it this week? Because you a Department of Truth too as well, Joe. Yeah. Just brought that up.
I'm throwing curveballs here because I'm breaking the rules of my own segment, but I think this is the evolution of just having these conversations. And I think if we have to look at props or flops, I if you take in what I said and my perspective and what James said as well, and what I've said to the viewers over the last few weeks, what context are we giving to props or flops? If you're talking about story and looking what Image is doing, we could give this props all day, but when we look at why it made the list, I got to give it flops because it's the wrong reason at the wrong time, and I see nothing but a volatile future for wherever this book is going to land in terms of the Spec investment.
If I may, gentlemen, there's one on this list I don't agree with at all.
Let's get to that after Chris's too. Let's definitely get to that. But the reason I'm taking myself out of this specific conversation is I have a conflict of interest when it comes to press from the comic shop. So I don't want to put myself out there like I'm pumping and dumping or anything like that. So I'm taking myself out, and that's all.
We know you got that tattooed on your lower back, Jeff. Pumping and dumping.
Mum's the word until fresh from the comics. Pumping. In 2 years, Chris, that could possibly be your best joke. Oh my God, I can't top that. Moving on, Chris, your next book here. Holy cow!
Okay.
You got me blushing.
Well, so this kind of again, and I know we're looking at one book. It was Black Panther 3 that made the list that I want to talk about, and it's talking about Tosin. And I know I'm like, flops to the whole list, and I don't want to give Tosin a complete flop, but this book didn't make the list again, his first appearance, because he shows up in issue 7, and I know that people are looking at this and they're going back to specking on this book because of movie hype possibilities. That's why this book is on this list. So this is a tough one because, Jeff, what do I say all the time? Kevin Feige takes over the reins of Marvel Comics, right? And we look at what they tried to do for 10 plus years prior, once the MCU started, and once we got Avengers and we knew that we were diving into this Infinity saga. So much that happened in the movies was then kind of recycled back into the comic books after the fact. And I always said they're going to bring Feige on and they're going to start doing what they were doing originally. And what I think a lot of older heads, people our age, 30 plus, really enjoyed with the MCU was they're bringing back source material that we were reading as kids. They were bringing in characters that were here before we were born or that came about when we were kids. And then we're seeing these storylines play out. Yeah, maybe different and in their own way, and they're changing things up. But so much so that we can have that nostalgia. Then they would recycle what had happened in the movies back into the comic books. We get new Infinity Wars, when new Guardians of the Galaxy, when we get them introduced and all this stuff. Well, I think that Kevin Feige heading the comic books, and this is just my opinion, I don't know, but knowing him, I would like to see him take the reins and say, we're going to get fresh in the comic books. We're going to start creating new characters again in the comics and then having the comic books tell these stories and then introducing them into the movies and TV shows instead of doing the opposite. So I think, and this could be a good thing for this character. There could be a lot riding on Tosin, especially, unfortunately, what has happened with Chadwick and his passing and the whole question mark of Black Panther. Who's going to take the reins? Shuri going to take the reins. M'Baku, a multiversal T'Challa. Oh, Vibranium Man, right? So, you know, I don't want to short the possibilities here. But again, I know that this book continues to hit this list because of that reason. Miles Morales, because this Tosin was compared to Miles Morales, and that's what pushed the hype of Tosin. Miles Morales, in my humble opinion, who's 10 years in the game now, 10 years plus in the game, I think Miles is a character that balances out the love of the character in the comic books with the love of the character because of the success of the Into the Spider-Verse, because of the success of the video game, and because we are speculating on him showing up in the MCU. And I love that about Miles. I love that you have all of these things, and I think all of these things are driving the value of his books. And I love that because it shows you how diverse the comic book market is. And we can have all of these things happening simultaneously. Live action Spec, animated Spec, actual comic book enthusiasts that are buying into the character just because they love the character. But with Tosin, there's a big question mark there to where is there enough inherent value in this character and his story arc and what he means to the comic books? Or are we just all riding on him showing up in the MCU? And if he doesn't, what's going to happen? And remember, I haven't even looked at the numbers of this book, but I mean, this book was already hitting close to, like, you know, getting up to Ultimate Fallout 4 numbers from 2020. And that just blows my mind. So again, when you're looking at like props or flops, that's why I'm just like, it's the same thing. It's extremely, extremely volatile. And while I wish I would have picked this book up because, you know, I can't beat myself up and have FOMO now and go grab it for some extremely high price, hoping and wishing, you know, gambling. And it goes back to that deeper socio-cultural or psychological addictive nature, the fight or flight, you know, need, where it's that next fix. And if I'm missing out on it, I'm not thinking with my conscious brain. I'm thinking on a reactionary basis of just letting those endorphins take over, similar to how anybody that gets the hot seat at a casino in Las Vegas, and you know, they keep losing, but they're like, oh, the blackjack states have risen, right? Oh, now I don't know. I'm not a gambler, so I don't know. But like maybe the pot, like, right? Isn't there a pot that like grows or something? And like, you know, now they're like running to the bank next door trying to take out a loan because they're like, oh, I can hit it this time. And then they got to, you know, put their house up for a second mortgage, and then they lose it to the bank and all that. So I can't, I know those are extremes, but I can't put so much in to this character and why it's showing up on these top 10 lists.
James, what are your thoughts on Black Panther number 3?
I have no thoughts because I don't follow. I'm like Journo. I'm not that reactionary. I plug into things that I actually know, and something like that, it's just a little too like, you're right. It's just like, if it flops, it like that's going to die and no one's going to remember that character. So that's not interesting for me. What is interesting to me is that Thunderbolts finally getting the attention I think it deserves. Mm-hmm. I always thought that was, I don't like to say this following term very much. I always thought that was a very undervalued book. And with the announcements about the Thunderbolts, I don't know if it was a movie or show or whatever, it's nice to see that book get a little of attention, but it is, again, probably for the wrong reasons. It's getting attention because there's going to be a movie or show, and not because it's awesome, which unfortunately, that's the real reason I like it, is that thing's awesome. So the Black Panther book, yeah, maybe it turns into something. I didn't pick it up. It doesn't change my life that I didn't pick it up. Let me tell you. You know, there is one book here I did think I wanted to comment on. If you want to pop it back up on the screen. Issue number 4 here on this list.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't want to steal your thunder. Is that the last one you wanted to
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a feeling we're going to agree with you here on this.
Yeah.
Okay, so everything you just said is accurate. These are all on here for what we could call the wrong reasons. People just hunting little whiffs in the wind about something getting big or whatever the heck. Issue number 4 is on here because of some silly choices they made within the pages of just trying to be really pandering and trying to be like reach a more urban audience and stuff like that, which makes the book almost a parody of itself.
Right.
And I like that people want to pick that up because it's just a bunch of editors being dumb about some stuff and some stupid choices. So it's like a funny book to own. It's almost like those books you pick up. I'm trying to think of an example where maybe there's a reprint where it's like they didn't bleep out the F word.
Yeah.
See it, or that one Superman book where you pick it up and you can see the Twin Towers on fire. This is one of those types of books where it's like you flip it up and it's like, oh, look at this dumb thing they decided to do. That's actually interesting. And that's not because of a movie. Yeah. That's not some variant. That's just because of a silly choice. So that's my exception to this list.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. And we did, because it was on here last week, we did address that as an outlier. So and again, it's like for all the wrong reasons, right? But and it's interesting too. I was recently in an interview. Big shout out to Jimmy with Small Town Collectibles, but we talked about that, and it is funny how these kind of bloopers or blenders, get attention. And I was like, I didn't even, because I was being interviewed about it and I didn't even read it. I'm like, now I want to go buy it just to read the story and to see what everyone's talking about,
You see what you just said? You want to buy it because of the story, right there. That's a legitimate thing to make that on this list. It reminds me of like all those weird 80s X-Men cartoons. How the X-Men's where Kitty Pryde was like saying the N-word and all this crazy stuff. You seen those, Journo?
No.
Yeah. And the weirdest thing is there's a few X-Men books. I think one might be a New Mutants, where Kitty Pryde just like goes off with like racial slurs, homophobic slurs. It's like, girl, chill.
Yeah, we
the book, like, you want to pick it up, not because it's a key, but because it's like, oh my God, did she really say that? Oh yes, she did.
Yep.
Yeah, but people are paying crazy prices, and there's a history of this. Like when COVID first started, I think there was a character called COVID in Amazing Spider-Man that people went nuts for completely the wrong reason. Like
Corona,
thinking that they're gonna. It was Corona. That's who it was. There was another one, Immortal Hulk, where the artist drew some sort of anti-Semitic thing in the window, and that issue was recalled, but everybody's going nuts for it. So those types of controversial books that like.
Yeah, if you want to hold on, I might be able to find that Superman book. I know I've got it right here.
But yeah, again, it for the wrong reason. And then this What If book, I saw somebody on Tishu. It's a What If book. Anything goes. The problem with this is that there were some stereotypes used, and it was really inappropriate. The way I haven't read it, but from what I've understood, and the fact that it's on a top 10 list is just like, what do we got here?
That's the Twin Towers on fire.
Ooh,
and this came out. I believe this came out like a week before 9/11.
Oh, see, well, that was like, that's not, that's a bad choice. That was a bad coincidence. I had a buddy.
Coincidence. Yeah, it's like, I think the band was Dream Theater. They had some live bootleg concert that released, and it showed like New York City on fire, and it came out like the day.
Well, my buddy was in a band called Dragpipe that had an album that came out that week with the towers on fire.
Wow.
and obviously that's not intentional. That's
Right,
planned for months in advance, and that ruined the band. So, anyways, all right. So, Chris, we are going to get to the third pick of this week, which actually will look familiar in terms of what you've done in the past. Here we go.
Yeah, so as you guys can see, maybe as I'm going down, there's a theme here after saying just give them all flops. This one is the biggest question mark in terms of, well, could this be a positive thing? We're going to talk about Iron Cat. We have the Iron Cat number 1 in 50 variant on here, but I'm not going to talk about that one. That follows the trend of the
number 9,
the incentive, incentive variant and everything. Cool cover, by the way. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to talk about Spectacular Spider-Man Annual number 4. Now, we do have our standard graphic. Here we go for this book, because I wanted to really look at the numbers for this one like I normally do. So when it made the top 10 list last week, it had 192% upward trend in sales. And just for perspective, there's I don't have a lot of graded data. There was no sales this week or last week, but there are 21 total copies on the census. 11 of them are 9.8. So a few people have sent this book in to get graded. Last graded copy sold May of this year. It was a 9.4 and it sold for $50. So when you consider the cost of grading and everything, that's it. There's not much value there. Now, the high raw last week when this book hit the top 10 was 40. It actually has continued to increase in terms of high raws. There was actually a good amount. There was a handful over 40 this last week, with the high sitting at 51. Current average raw since, by the way, I'm sorry guys, I didn't give context. Why are we talking about Iron Cat in this book? Because this is the first appearance of Tamara Blake, who was revealed to be Iron Cat. So context that is definitely needed. Sorry guys. The current average raw since that reveal, which was over the last 2 weeks, $27. So keep in mind, these are raw averages. You're not taking grade into consideration, okay? Now, this is what I think is very, very important. The average raw prior to this reveal was $4. That is a 575% increase in value, not sales. Sorry, guys. Increase in value. So there's the pros and cons that we could pick out about this book. One is you can really look at this and say, well, there's no movie spec here. There's no live action, no movie spec, nothing like that, right? This is just something that's happening in a modern comic, Iron Cat, a character that didn't really have a role in the comic books or, much of a backstory. She was a good friend of Felicia, Black Cat, had tie-ins with, I believe, it wasn't her father. Wasn't it the fox? I believe the Black Fox was, if I can remember correctly. I read all these. It's been a while. Trained in cat burglary, right? So now Marvel Comics, the comic book side of things, however many 30, almost 40 years later, decides to kind of give this character something, give him a backstory and turn him into something. So we could give this book a props because it's showing that people are actually looking at this for what's happening in the comic books, and it's tying it all together. But the reason why I'm even looking at this book as a flops is because of two things. One, it's hard to believe that a lot of people that are seeing this reveal, not thinking that this could show up in a Sony movie or the MCU, / Sonyverse. It's hard to see that not being the case here with this, because almost everything Marvel, including the Spider-Man characters that could show up in a Sony movie or in a partner adventure with Marvel Studios, it has the potential to happen. Another thing is the increase in sales, in value, excuse me. A 575% increase from a $4 book is, and again, that's the average. I'm not even calculating the $40 to $50 sales. I'm taking that's the $27 average next to the $4 average. 575%. Even solid stocks. I'm going to use Disney. Let's use Disney as an example. During the COVID market, for the stock market even, Disney stock ballooned up to about close to, I think it got up to at least like $170 a share or even higher. Right now, last time I looked, it was sitting at about $95. Woo! So it dropped roughly 50% in value after seeing such huge increases over the last couple of years. And Disney is a solidified stock. Even solidified, more conservative stock can really hurt you and be volatile when you see such high increases over a short term. This right here is extremely volatile for me, because even if people aren't looking at this as, oh, this character could show up in a movie, like we're going back to what James said about that Tosin. We look at what modern comics are doing. We look at what Marvel and DC has been doing for the last decade, and they're trying, guys. They're trying to cater to different types of audiences. They're trying to recycle things. They're trying to be new with things. They're trying a lot of these things, and a lot of it hasn't really been working, and I think they still have a lot of kinks to work out. Who knows what's going to happen with Tamara Blake and Iron Cat a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. So again, that's why I'm just looking at this. It's like, it's for the wrong reasons. If this book was on this list, Moving Units, and it was selling for $10 or $15, maybe I'd give it props because it's not that much of a risk. It's less risky. But I just can't go there with it. It's a big question mark. And I can't wait, and I say this cynically, to see a 9.8 of this book go on sale over the next couple of weeks. If that happens, and this book sells for $500 or $600 and a 9.8, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be like, and again, I'm not spending it, so I'm not gonna worry about it, but I cringe, you know. So
I'm not picking it up. Yeah.
I appreciate the callback. I appreciate when they dig and do these types of things. I'm not. Yeah, we're gonna start hearing people. She's gonna be in the next Avengers. She's gonna be in this. She's gonna be in that. Just like Tosin is in Black Panther too. Apparently, who knows if he is, but most likely he's not. Those are the types of things that we're gonna start hearing. And I agree with you. I think this book is a bit volatile. It's definitely volatile, and I would not put a ton of stock in there. I am curious to see all the 9.8s that come back and see what they go for, but totally on the same page as you all, for sure.
The last 9.8 of that book sold in 2020. Look at this, $26. They lost money.
Wow.
Getting it graded from CGC.
Yep. Nice.
Yeah. Again, we're not here to tell you what not to buy or what to buy. These are our opinions. If this is worth it to you to spend that much money on a 9.8 of this book, go for it. If you want it in your collection, go for it. If you think it's going to be a great investment, I'm a little hesitant on that. So, yes, Mark Leneker.
I'll pick it up for $26 and a 9.8 all day.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark Leneker, Static Shackle. Or his other version, Satanic Shock. But 360, aka Joe, got it correct. So Mark did it before him. Anyways, congratulations.
With the slip of the fingers there.
Yeah, no doubt. It's still great to make fun of him. All right, so that right there, Chris, that's the top 10 look back, props or flops. It was a bit different than it was each week for a reason.
It was a bit different. And James, we appreciate your input. And guys, I really hope that you took something out of this week's, trying to flip it up. And Jeff and I, we are going to continue to try to, look at books that are moving on the market differently, because look, I'm all about, I'm a big investor in comics, even though mostly for the long term. I like to spec here and there if it's things that I like. And these are all valid things to talk about. I don't hate, but it does get tiring, for me as as like a journalist to sit here and talk about this and be redundant week after week. So we're going to continue to try to evolve this and try to really talk about what the market's doing in new and fresh different ways for you guys. So we'll see where it goes.